Okay, we're on.
We're on?
All
Okay,
right.
so my name is David Smith. I'm a member of the Residents Council, and this is our second in a series of what we're calling Council Connections, where we bring in the committee chair of one of the committees here at Woodland Pond and have that person talk about what their activities are, what their mission is, how they came to be formed, and so on. And so today we have as our second guest, Carl Rodman, who is the chair of the Physical Plant Committee. If my recollection is correct, he is the only person to have chaired that committee since its inception about 2 years ago.
Right.
And Carl and I have talked before this, and we decided that the best way for him to share what his committee does is for him to go about in his own way, in his own words, and just talk. And if I have a question, I hope I can frame it in such a way that it's not redundant to something he's already said or create some misunderstanding anywhere. So, Carl, why don't you take it away?
Thank you, Dave. I'm very happy to be here and happy to talk about the committee. And I'm glad that we have a vast audience
We do.
of 5 people here who should be welcome to interrupt me and add things at any time if you wish. First, how this committee came into being. A little over 2 years ago, Tom Tango wanted to call together a group of people. Where's the camera? Up there. Yeah. A group of people to whom he could talk freely about what's on his mind and explore ideas. And he made it quite sure this wasn't a committee. He wasn't calling it a committee. It was an informal group. Well, we lasted as an informal group for a couple of months. And Dave, your council, the council, decided we should become a council committee.
Sucked you right up, didn't we?
And so it was set up. And then for almost 2 years, we have been a committee. Our mission statement is we represent to management the concerns of residents regarding the operation and maintenance of the buildings and grounds of Woodland Pond, including long-range planning and considered ideas brought to us by management. What that means is we're a go-between. We ask individuals out there, all the residents, to approach any of us and talk about things they see that need to be done. And management comes to us with ideas that are in the works. Management, we have learned, has such a huge job on their hands that if we come up with something that should be done, that doesn't mean it's going to be done tomorrow because they have other jobs that they've got to do first. Dave, what did you just quote to me about work orders?
Well, I was doing some research on another project, and I come across some resident council minutes from sometime in 2018, wherein there was a report from Tom that said in a given month he had 800 and some odd work orders filed and 700 and some odd completed. So that's approaching 30 a day.
Mm-hmm. It's hard. When we come up with a new item, it goes on our concerns list. And he has a concerns list, but he has his own concerns. One of the items, for example, was the library can use better lighting, particularly in the mystery section. If you can remember back when they first started replacing the incandescent lights with the, what do they call it, LEDs, there was huge controversy about they're too bright and we don't want them and so on. But they came in and we got used to them pretty much. And there's a huge savings in money. And there was a financial grant coming from the government. So the lights were installed in the hallways and elsewhere. But the lights for the library were put on hold until he could finish all the lights that fit in that program with the grant. Another example of the kind of thing that Tom is up against that gets in the way of his doing things like fixing the clock, which I'll come back to. Remember, the clock was high on his list of things that he wanted to get to, last winter, and one of the boilers went, and he was afraid that the second boiler was going to go, so he decommissioned both of them. Do you remember there was this huge trailer sitting outside of the library? That trailer was a portable boiler, and he changed both of our water boilers, hot water boilers, without our missing a day of hot water. So the jobs he's up against are immense. On the other hand, when he put up the lights, the street lights, they were installed so they were facing upwards and they were too bright, and people complained bitterly. And Tom said, okay, I'll get together with all you guys and we'll walk around and see what needs to be done, and then we'll get to it. And I remember this is one case in which we got our back up and we said, no, get to them right away. People are complaining they're terrible. And so he did. And that was the first time I really felt that we had clout in that kind of an area.
I recall you and your mob walking down in front of my cottage a particular evening and pointing here and pointing there and taking notes and all.
Now, there were some issues that were very easily dealt with, and that felt good too. One of them was the ceiling tiles. You may have noticed in early spring a year ago, a lot of the ceiling tiles were simply moved aside. And the purpose of that, when we brought it up to Tom, he tells us, it is because when winter comes, I guess it was in the fall, not in the spring, when the freezes come, this allows heat to get up there where there are pipes, so they shouldn't freeze. So once we discussed it a bit, the solution was to put in attractive looking grates and leave them there year round. So that felt good.
And looks better.
And it looks better.
Yes.
Thanks. Another very easy one was Marcia Thompson had been complaining in one of those many work orders that it's very hard with your bundles to open the door and get into the garbage room and reach for the lights. Could Tom install automatic lights that go on as soon as the door opens? But somehow it got delayed. She brought it to our committee. We brought it to Tom, and within the week, lights were installed. So that was an easy one.
And an important one.
Yeah. I'm going to stop talking about events and just quickly tell you who our members are.
Thank you.
Because if you're out there, audience listening, your responsibility is to tell any of these people anything you see that needs to be done around here. Addie Reynolds, Bill Schnitzer, me, Lionel Heyman, Marilyn Delascio, Pat Kirkpatrick, Paul Farges, Robert Brunette, our secretary, Vicki Danskin, Tom Natoli, Deborah Moore, our newest member, and Dave Smith, who is council liaison.
You got about half of those people in the room right here, don't you?
Vicki asked me to point out that we are sort of an intramural group because Deborah is the chair of, I think, of the landscape committee. Is that right?
Yes.
And Vicki is the person most responsible for decor in the halls, so we can have a certain amount of give and take. Okay, now, two issues that are contemporary issues. The first one is memorial benches with plaques. And that should be an easy one, but we set up a committee for it, and that subcommittee came up with a map with locations for where we could put the benches. And lo and behold, within a couple of weeks, we had 2 requests for benches, and both of them were for places that weren't on the map. But we said, that's fine, go ahead and do it. And the procedure of getting a bench is fairly simple. You pay $700 to Sarah Hull, and she gets a bench and a plaque, and it's placed there. However, with the issue, Tom decided we better discuss it a little bit further, and he wants to take it out of Sarah's hands, and he wants to be the person who's settling it. So that one is still up in the air. The other issue is the pretty dividers that are between each cottage, big stone dividers that have flowers planted. And they say, this is your cottage, this is my cottage. It was discovered by Dave. What?
They're falling apart.
They're falling
they,
apart.
They implode because of the internal construction that was, I guess the thing's about 10 years old. So whoever approved it is not around anymore, but they were constructed in such a way that over time, with a lot of water being poured into them, as we all water our things, that they would rot out. And that's what happened to the one between my cottage and my neighbor Cynthia. And so she is the gardener, and we say, you do whatever you want, Cynthia. And she was watering things in the ground, and the dirt would fall down. And she put more dirt in it, and it would fall down, and more. And finally, it just collapsed right down. And she thought there was an earthquake one night because it had shaken so much. But when the maintenance guys came over and actually went through it and emptied it out, they found that it was poorly constructed. Tom came over and said that.
What it was is the stonework, which is artificial stone, is basically glued onto a plywood frame.
Yeah.
So it was inevitable that eventually it'd go. But
mine was the first, but others are, you can see some chips in them as well.
Beginning. So once it was announced that this was on Tom's agenda to replace these, the cottage owners had a little revolt and organized and were quite upset and came to our committee. And we reassured them that we brought it to Tom, and he said nothing would be done without the committee and he first originally said the committee would have to approve or at least discuss with him the new design, what kind of a replacement would be there. And he said he would also bring in the cottage owners. So it's one of those things that...
I'm an owner.
Yes?
I'm an owner now.
Renters?
Resident.
Occupant? Very good.
Not an owner.
Okay, so that's an issue that's an ongoing issue. The clock is an issue that we have discussed it at various times. Why are you laughing, Paul?
I like Michelle's idea to take off the hands.
Michelle's idea to take off the hands. You like that idea. The clock can be repaired. First, we were told the parts can't be got. Then we were told they can be got. Then Tom says the problem is it's hard to get in there. But he assures us that it is going to be repaired eventually. Meanwhile, another item that came up, the pool is closed because the paint job wasn't proper and has to be redone. So things get in the way of something being done in a hurry. Another issue that's bothered some of us was the entrance to the south wing, where there was a shortcut that people take going straight out their door rather than walking around the way the path goes. And stones had been placed there to walk on. Somebody tripped, so the stones were taken out, and for safety, 3 rose bushes were planted there to stop people from coming through. Well, there was brouhaha upon brouhaha, and finally it was agreed that when Tom gets around to replacing other cement platforms that have to be replaced, he would give us the cement, and Paul, in the goodness of his heart, could put a sidewalk in there. So we're still waiting on that one. Okay. I'm not going to go much longer, but since I've been given this microphone, I'm going to talk about my personal issue, which has been brought up and stays on our concerns list, which for some reason, when we got the new exercise machines in the gym, those exercise machines don't have any weights at all. They are worked under air pressure. and you set a pound weight, and that number of pounds of air pressure is what you work against. And in order to get the air pressure, they have a compressor, which they put in the passageway that used to be the way you get from the gym into the bathroom and then into the locker room and then the pool. So the architect who built our gym area and pool, in between the two of them, put a men's room and a women's room and showers, changing room. Okay, they have both been made inaccessible from the gym. And I personally feel that was a mistake, and we should go back to it. Probably not much is going to get done in the near future until COVID is licked, but it seems to me this should be back on the agenda. Okay, do any of you want to raise any issues?
Any of your committee people here want?
Just a reminder that people, if they see some maintenance, crack in the wall, a light bulb has to be changed, they should notify either us or have the concierge desk make out a work order.
Okay, I don't think you can be heard, Bob, but thank you.
Carl can
Just
rephrase it or
a
restate
reminder
it.
to everybody out there that when you see something that needs to be done, it would be nice if you make out a work order or if you talk to any of the people on the committee. Joan just walked in, and Joan is an old camp director, and I'm reminded of one other thing that I used to always tell people in camp. If you're walking down the hall and you see a piece of paper there are three people, if you've gone past it, there are three people who are guilty. The person who dropped it, another person who's passed it, and you for not picking it up. I think we all feel very responsible for the place, which is why this committee is fun. And everybody who's a resident here is also responsible for helping us be aware of what needs to be done. Thank you. Yes, Deborah.
I just want to point out that, thank you, I forgot.
I don't know if you're on the camera, but Dave is bringing you.
Anyway, I just wanted to point out that there's an article in the Woodland Pond Life relating to the fact that I videotaped 2 bears in my backyard this summer. And one of the reasons that the bears come to us is because of bird feeders. They eat the seeds. And the bad news is that if bears find food in our yards, they'll lose their fear of people and they'll start eating the garbage from our garbage cans and things like that. And then when that happens, the bears have to be killed, which is a tragedy. So it's important that we put away our bird feeders except for the months when bears hibernate. Bears hibernate in December, January, and February, and sometimes March. So please be aware of the fact that we do have bears in our neighborhood and we don't want to attract them.
Okay, I guess I can talk about one more issue then, since you brought that up, that the very first issue this committee ever dealt with when we came into existence was the issue of bird feeders, because birds were getting into the vents of dry cleaners and costing a lot of money. And Tom wanted to just make bird feeders verboten, no more bird feeders. But a lot of people were upset by that, and we went back and forth, and Tom got metal grates to put over the vents to keep the birds from coming in. And the question of when and where bird feeders should be remained open, but it's been an old issue.
But less acute than it once was, because now the birds don't nest in the vents.
Yeah. Dave, back to you.
Okay, so I do have a couple things on behalf of the council. Our next scheduled television appearance is 2 weeks from today. We'll have the Welcome Committee represented, and in the morning's resident council meeting, we decided that we'd like to have the landscape committee do the first one in November, if you can make that one, Deborah. Okay, so that's good. And last time we were here, I have a hat on today because somebody told me earlier that if I don't pick my head up far enough because of my particular haircut, it shines. So I put a hat on today, and maybe there won't be so much glare in TV. Well, I consider that a constructive criticism, not an insult. Where was I? Oh, so last time in this meeting, I asked for former committee chairs or council members if they had some knowledge of how term limits were set or established or even talked about in the past for various resident committees. Could they please come forward with any historical information or documents? I was contacted by one person. I'm kind of led to believe that there's an archive somewhere, and Shalom and I will be looking into that next week. So maybe you were the one who first brought it up, so maybe we have something. If I'll get back to you if you have some more. Also was decided talked about in this morning's committee, we're going to have a resident council meeting at the end of the month, and Suzanne reminded us that normally what past presidents had done was have some committee chairs come in and talk a little bit about what their committee has done during the course of that year or even previous years. But since we've started this particular forum, we're going to try and do something else this year. We thought, since it's been a particularly interesting year here, that we would try to do some little informational, I don't want to say skits, but talks about some of the things that have happened and try to put a bit of a humorous spin on them if we can. You mentioned the boiler. We also had a flood. We had no water for a while. We have had COVID for quite a while. And I'm sure there's another thing or two that'll pop up that we could try to have some fun with if fun can be had. That's all I have, but you had something else.
I have found one more thing in my notes that I did want to talk to you about, which I think is important. Even though Dave said, stay away from controversy, he didn't exactly say that. He said, don't step on anybody's toes. The question of aesthetics. The stone platform was built in the courtyard, outside the pub, towards the fountain, and a new stone platform was just built. That stone platform supposedly is part of the project of fixing the leak that's leaking in the pond, leaking onto the sidewalk. I'm surprised at how many people don't walk out there. It's a beautiful area. Then if you go around the courtyard, in the next courtyard, the southern courtyard, there's also a fountain and lights were installed there. And some people have complained to us that it looks like Las Vegas. It's all lit up at night and the fountain is flowing and it bothers them. So Tom said, okay, for now, we will turn off the lights at 10 o'clock. But this is getting into the issue of how things look, how things feel, and is the fountain too busy a fountain? Does it spray too much on that stone platform? Should it be turned off? Shouldn't it be? A fountain was put in because some people asked for it. And then as soon as it was put in, other people said, we don't like it. So this place is going to be forever at Loggerheads.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you're going to solve everybody's problem by doing this and making everybody
we will never
happy.
solve everybody's problem, but at least we are a place where you can air your problems and see what happens. Thanks.
Okay. And just in closing, I meant to encourage people to come forward, contact a council member. If they have any particular experiences they'd like to share about what happened this year, maybe we can fold them into what we're going to try to do. So thank you all for watching, and see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.